We have officially made it to the bye weeks, which means the Packers can't hurt me this week. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Stress-free football is the best football, Grossi. And today, we are going to be breaking down and predicting each game in the Week 5 lineup. But last week, I went 10-5, giving me a season record of 47-16, which means that I am in the top 500 of our Pick'em League, which has nearly 27,000 people in it. Pretty good. But you know who's better? The 5 people who are tied for first place with a 52-11 record. So a huge shout out and congrats to them. Let's see if I can catch up this week. Starting off with another NFC West Thursday Night Football showdown, you got the San Francisco 49ers taking on the LA Rams. The 49ers were undefeated heading into their game with the Jaguars, unfortunately losing Nick Bosa the week prior for the entirety of the season. And injuries are nothing new for the 49ers. They have been dealing with it feels like forever. Of course, you had all of last season where their entire team was on IR. But heading into this year, you had Brock Purdy get banged up. He came back last week. You had George Kittle was banged up. And ultimately, they suffered their first defeat at the hands of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And here's the thing. The 49ers defense still looks pretty darn good, even without Nick Bosa. Fred Warner is an absolute monster. The problem lies on the other side of the ball. We thought it was originally going to be because of Mac Jones, and maybe he wasn't going to be able to carry the torch that Brock Purdy left behind. But instead, it turns out their offensive line is also not so great because they were letting Brock Purdy get beat up back there last week, and ultimately it led to a loss. And it was actually just announced that Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings are all going to be out this Thursday against the Rams, so it'll be Mac Jones getting yet another start for the 49ers, and the uphill battle against injuries continue. They're going to be taking on the LA Rams, who went toe-to-toe with the Indianapolis Colts and came away victorious. Puka Nacua has over 500 yards in the first 4 weeks of football, which is absolutely insane. We talked about this in Power Rankings yesterday, that he has 100 yards more than the second best receiver, which is JSN from the Seahawks. And so yeah, Puka is having himself a pretty darn season. But he's not the only one on that offense, because Matthew Stafford's clone is playing pretty well.
Your clones are very impressive. You must be very proud.
I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe.
So while the 49ers' undefeated season came to an end, it was the Rams who ended the undefeated season of the Indianapolis Colts. And yes, A.D. Mitchell definitely helped some things, but the Rams, who have gone toe-to-toe with the Eagles in their only loss of the season, have looked pretty damn good this year. And heading into this game with their pass rush going up against that already beaten-up offensive line of the 49ers, I think the Rams should win this football game. I think it could be a pretty close matchup, and you never know with division rivals. I mean, hell, even the Cardinals were able to come back in the fourth quarter against the Seahawks last Thursday night. But here, I think the Rams have a little bit too much firepower. And like I said, I am very worried for Mac Jones against this pass rush. So because of that, I'm going with LA, and the clone strikes again. Following that, you got the second international game in a row for the Vikings as they take on the Cleveland Browns. No, that didn't sound right. Hold on, let me try that again. Europe is once being held hostage by the plague that is the purple incarnation of Satan. Taking on the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, that was much better. The Vikings losing in Ireland last week at the hands of their old foe, Aaron Rodgers. Carson Wentz definitely did not have his best game, but talking about injuries like we were for the 49ers, the Vikings are a beat-up football team right now. You can look at the offensive line, you can look at the injuries on the defense, you can look at Aaron Jones on IR, and of course, J.J. McCarthy is missing as well. And heading into this game, this is a big game for Minnesota. Not necessarily because it has anything to do with the standings, but Vikings fans know they'll never hear the end of it from Lions fans if they lose this one. They're going to be taking on the Cleveland Browns, who will be starting Dillon Gabriel for his first start of his NFL career. The news of Joe Flacco getting benched came out today, and so Dillon Gabriel will be behind center. And for the Cleveland Browns, they obviously have a very good defense, unless they're going against the Lions, apparently. But their offense has been the thing that has been lagging behind. Now, Judkins the past few weeks has really started to develop a little bit more as they give him more and more carries. He had a pretty nice week last week. And for this game, I think it's just going to come down to both defenses. You have a Brian Flores-led defense going up against Dillon Gabriel in his first start. That does not seem like a fun matchup. And you have a battered offensive line for the Vikings going up against Myles Garrett on the Browns side of things. So yeah, this could be a pretty low-scoring game. The Vikings were able to claw their way back into that game against the Steelers last week to make it look a bit more respectable. But ultimately, it's going to come down to Carson Wentz and if he can move that ball against this very good Cleveland defense, because J.J. McCarthy, as of right now, is not practicing today, so I doubt he is going to get the start on Sunday. So this honestly is a total coin flip. I picked the Vikings to beat the Steelers last week in Europe, and that didn't work out. And so I'm gonna go with the Minnesota Vikings once again. One, because I hope it curses them, and two, even if I'm wrong, the Vikings lose. So it's a good day. Vikings win. Following that, you got the Vegas Raiders taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Raiders, they put on quite a defensive performance. Ashton Jeanty had his breakout game, but then Geno Smith was like, you know what? I'm going to throw 3 interceptions for the second time this season. And unfortunately for the Raiders, while they did get to laugh at the Chargers for losing to the Giants, they wound up ultimately choking to the Bears. Now, it did come down to a blocked game-winning field goal. The Raiders were in position to win that football game, and I have to imagine there's some frustration from Raiders fans here. You want to see Jeanty get more involved, and Max Crosby was a monster last week getting after Caleb Williams, but if Geno Smith keeps on turning the ball over and that offensive line can't block, it is going to be a very long season for Vegas. They're going to be taking on the Colts, who we just talked about, who suffered their first loss of the season against the LA Rams, and I have to say, with all this talk about the Colts, if they're for real or not, they looked pretty damn good against a great football team in the LA Rams. And so I got to give the Colts a ton of credit. Jonathan Taylor's having himself a really nice season. And while Daniel Jones definitely did not have his best game on Sunday, they were in good position to win that football game. If it wasn't for an A.D. Mitchell holding call or an A.D. Mitchell fumble, they could have definitely won. You take a look at their defense, which looks to have improved from last season. And it seems like after 4 weeks, the Colts are at least a very solid football team. And I think going up against the Raiders is a good matchup for them. This is a very winnable game for the Colts, but for the Raiders, if they're able to establish the run with Jeanty and able to get after Daniel Jones with Max Crosby, the Raiders could wind up squeaking this out. However, I'm going to go with Indiana Jones and the Colts to get a bounce-back victory this week. I do think if they get Jonathan Taylor rolling, even though Swift was not able to move against this Raiders defense last week, the Colts should be able to win the game, and A.D. Mitchell, just hold on to the ball, man. Following that, you got the New York Giants taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Giants, in Jackson Dart's first career start, beat the undefeated Chargers last week. It was incredible, and also marks one of the first times that a team from New Jersey actually does something well.
You know what? I reject nature.
Sorry, I had to put that New Jersey thing in again. But let's talk about the Giants. Taking a look on the defensive side of things, their defensive line is still really darn good. On the other side of things, their offensive line, not so good. As Jackson Dart, even though he got the win and made that offense go a little bit faster, he was getting beat up behind that O-line. On top of that, Malik Neighbors out for the season, which is a catastrophic loss for this Giants offense. However, some good news is that Cam Scatterbo looks like he is really starting to develop as they give him more and more carries with Tyrone Tracy getting beat up. It looks like he's making the most out of those opportunities, and so the Giants may have found a run game. They're going to be taking on the New Orleans Saints, who, again, they don't look like the worst team in football. No, they still haven't won a game, but last week, they looked average. They're actually able to hang in with the Bills for a bit. Spencer Rattler doesn't look too bad. And it just seems like for the Saints, this is obviously just a development year. And if Spencer Rattler's play winds up declining throughout the season, maybe you're going to see a QB shakeup in Tyler Shook just to see what they got. But here, taking a look at this game, I'm actually going to pick the Giants to get the win. I almost picked the Saints to get the win here, but going up against that defensive front, and on top of that, the Giants having a good ground game, I think the Giants should be able to get a win, which would make it 2 in a row, which would be crazy, and hopefully not the last win for the Giants this season. Following that, you got the Dallas Cowboys taking on the New Jersey Jets. Yeah, they got to keep the Jersey thing. The Cowboys almost coming away with a victory in the Jerry Jones revenge game.
Now you just want to kiss the ground. Just a little peck, a smooch like you're kissing your sister.
But instead, we were all left unsatisfied with a frackin' tie. But you got to give a ton of credit to the Cowboys. Did their defense look great? Absolutely not. But their defense hasn't looked good almost this entire season. But their offense, Dak Prescott has been having a phenomenal season for the first 4 weeks. He was really damn good on Sunday night. It also seems like they found a run game with Javonte Williams, who's having a little bit of resurgence after having an injury-riddled time in Denver. And on top of that, George Pickens, the receiver they traded for in the offseason, had a really nice game against the Packers. And hell, they don't even have CeeDee Lamb. And so when it comes to the Cowboys, they're basically the opposite of the Cleveland Browns. They have a really good offense and not so great of a defense. And obviously, it's allowing them to stay in games. They're going to be taking on the Jets, who this past Monday night, it was a stinker of a game. And even with all the penalties thrown against them, they almost had a comeback against the Miami Dolphins. Unfortunately for them, though, they still have yet to win a game this season. And for the Jets, I know fans are already pointing fingers at coaching. They're taking a look at this overall roster and wondering, okay, who should be here next year and who shouldn't? But it's tough going. They're going to be competitive throughout the year. We've talked about this for a few weeks. I think they're going to be one of those pain in the ass teams that just stick around for a bit, but not going to win a ton of games. Here, I don't think they're going to be able to match up with the Cowboys very well. If Dak is able to have a clean pocket like he did against the Packers, I think the Cowboys should be able to win. And if they don't, well, then that tie with the Cowboys is going to look even worse for the Packers. Then you got the Denver Broncos taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Broncos put belt to ass against the Cincinnati Bengals this past Monday, though their offense, I think, put their own ass to their belt, but we won't talk about that. But the Broncos defense looked really, really good. Jake Browning had 125 yards. That O-line was struggling against the Broncos pass rush. Taking a look on the other side of the ball, Bo Nix had a pretty solid night. Yeah, he had some misses, but he was able to operate that offense to move them along at a moderate pace. On top of that, J.K. Dobbins got over 100 yards, the first time in over 2 seasons that has happened in Denver, that they have had a 100-yard rusher in a game, which is an insane stat. And it feels like for the Broncos, you're just waiting for that offense to come alive, whether it's the play calling or relying on the ground game a little bit more. I know you could do it, Sean Payton. It feels like there's more that this Broncos offense can be doing. Of course, that's going to be dependent on Bo Nix and his development, but in the meantime, their defense should be able to keep them afloat in a few games. They're going to be taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, who keep on winning ugly, but they're still winning.
Say it louder.
I'm ugly and I'm proud.
Louder.
I'm ugly and I'm proud.
The Eagles, who just can't play a full 4 quarters of football apparently in 2025, they had a great first half against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were dominating that game. And in the second half, yeah, they allowed the Bucs to come back into the game. And again, you got to talk about the Buccaneers because I think they are a very gritty team this year. But talking about the Eagles, they have so much talent on their roster, and it feels like on the offensive side of things, not very close to the Broncos, but in a similar vein, we're waiting for their full potential as well. You could look at offensive coordinator, you could look at Saquon Barkley not getting things going in his usual Saquon Barkley-esque ways, or you could look at Jalen Hurts, who has not put up riveting numbers, but again, at the end of the day, they're still finding ways to win. They're going up against a very good defense in the Broncos this week, and so I think that the Eagles offense against the Broncos D is a really fun matchup. This might wind up being a very low-scoring game, but ultimately here, I gotta go with the Eagles. I do think the Broncos offense is going to struggle against not only that defensive front of the Eagles, but also their secondary as well, and you might see a couple of Bo interceptions. So here, I have the Eagles at number 1 in my power rankings. I have them continuing their undefeated streak and getting yet another win, though it'll probably be ugly.
I'm ugly and I'm proud.
Following that, you got the Miami Dolphins taking on the Carolina Panthers. The Dolphins, they got their first win of the season! But then they lost Tyreek Hill.
What did it cost?
Everything.
The Dolphins not only getting their first win of the season, but Devin Achane had his best game of the season. I know a lot of folks have been waiting for him to have his breakout game, and he had a really nice game against the Jets. And as we mentioned before, even though the Jets were almost able to claw their way back, the Dolphins coming away with the win, you gotta hope that this is something that they can build upon. I know Tyreek Hill is gonna miss the rest of the season, but they do have some other weapons like Jalen Waddle. So I'm very curious to see how Tua is going to connect with Waddle, him being the number one wide receiver there. And so that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on as they take on the Carolina Panthers, who got blown out by the New England Patriots. The Patriots in 2025 scoring 40 plus points. That does not happen very often. On top of that, the Panthers had just shut out the Falcons the week before, and then to show up and have that absolute stinker on Sunday, it has been a roller coaster the past couple of seasons for Panthers fans. And honestly, there's not a lot of uphill climbs. It's all downhill. And so taking a look at this game, this is a winnable game for both teams. And honestly, I feel like it's a flip of the coin. The Panthers don't look very good at all. The Dolphins, even in their win, they don't look great. And so here, I'm gonna go with the Miami Dolphins because of Devin Achane. If they're able to establish the run like they did against the Jets, I do think they'll do enough to win this football game. The Panthers with Bryce Young, I have no doubt, can move this ball against this Dolphins defense, which doesn't look very good. But ultimately, I just don't trust what Carolina is doing right now. It looks like they might be having another season with yet another rebuild. We'll see what the status is of Bryce Young heading into the next offseason. But ultimately, I got the Dolphins winning this game in week 5. And for the Panthers, if you win, I'll just be happy for you, man. Then you got the Houston Texans taking on the Baltimore Ravens. This game should have been so good. The Texans getting their very first win of the season. More claps, more claps. Being able to shut out and take down the Tennessee Titans. The Texans defense has looked phenomenal these past 4 weeks. That has not been the problem whatsoever. The problem has been on the other side of the ball with their offensive line. CJ Stroud has not been having his best year, but hey, they were able to finally put it together and get their first win of the season last week. They're going to be taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who got their ass kicked by the Kansas City Chiefs last week. And it wasn't just the loss. It's now that the Ravens are 1-3 on the season, and now Lamar Jackson could be missing a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury.
I don't even want to be around anymore.
Yeah, things are not looking good in Baltimore. You take a look at their defense, their secondary, got some question marks there. Their pass rush got a bunch of question marks there. I know there's some injuries as well. Taking a look at their offensive line has not been great these past couple of games. And now with Lamar Jackson injured, yeah, things are really, really tough for the Ravens. The good news is from last week is that Derrick Henry didn't fumble, so that was nice, but they're going up against a very good Texans defense, and I think it's going to be tough for them to move the ball. Of course, the most important development is Lamar Jackson going to play this week? I read a couple reports that he could return this Sunday or he can miss 2 to 3 weeks. And so I have to assume he's probably going to not be there on Sunday unless he is really, really good to go. And so because of that, I think Cooper Rush against that Texans defense could actually give an upset victory to the Texans. I originally picked the Ravens to win this football game. It's being played in Baltimore. But you know what? I'm going to go with the Strouds to get the upset win against the Ravens. And if it doesn't work out, well, then at least Ravens fans will be happy. Following that, you got the Tennessee Titans taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Titans, you got shut out. There was less than 100 passing yards, less than 100 rushing yards. But hey, Jeffrey Simmons had that really great sack on CJ Stroud last week. If only they could sack their head coach.
Jeffrey?
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
But it has been a tough season for the Titans, and it's only been 4 weeks. Callahan gave up play calling because that wasn't working out, and then they didn't score a single point on Sunday. And ultimately, it's going to be a very long season for Tennessee. I wouldn't be surprised if Callahan winds up getting let go some point during this season. And ultimately, the Titans are just in this weird phase where they're just trying to figure out if Cam Ward is the guy. And unfortunately for Cam Ward, not only is he taking a whole bunch of sacks behind that offensive line, but in his own words, they're ass right now.
I mean, if we keeping a buck right now, we ass.
They're going to be taking on the Arizona Cardinals, who lost to the Seahawks last week, a sputtering offense that really didn't get going until the fourth quarter. Marvin Harrison Jr. taking a while to get going, but then finally had a really nice touchdown at the end of that game, and so that's something to build your hopes and dreams around. Unfortunately for the Cardinals, not only do they not have James Conner, but it looks like Benson is also banged up, and so that could really impact their ground game. And for the Cardinals, while their defense has definitely improved, their offense is not ideal. It just seems like they have hit a ceiling with Kyler Murray, and even though that ceiling's a little bit smaller, you had a little bit more expectations for the Cardinals this year. And taking a look at this game, coming off a tough divisional loss and coming off 10 days rest, this should be a nice bounce back game for the Cardinals. Even though they may struggle moving the ball against this Titans defense, I think they'll be able to do enough to get the win. And if not, well, then Cam Ward will get his first win as a starter in the NFL. And for Cardinals fans, it would be a tragedy. But for now, I'm going with Arizona. Then, this actually could be one of the games of the week, as you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Seattle Seahawks. It's a QB redemption bowl between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold.
I'm worried that the baby thinks people can't change, because I've worked really, really hard to change.
Let him hold the baby. People can change. I used to be a piece of shit.
The Buccaneers coming up short last week against the reigning defending Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. A really rough first half, which they couldn't get anything going, but they were able to bounce back later in that game. Bucky Irving leading the way, not only as their leading rusher, but also as their leading receiver. Igbuka had yet another good game. It was nice to see Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin back on the field, and I imagine that as they get healthier, the Buccaneers will look better and better. Unfortunately for the Buccaneers, Bucky Irving is dealing with an injury right now. He has a foot sprain, and so he is questionable for Sunday. Who knows if he's going to be playing? And they're going to be going up against a surging Seattle Seahawks team. You like that alliteration there? But in truth, the Seahawks, especially on offense, have looked pretty damn good. JSN is the second leading receiver in the NFL in terms of total yards. On top of that, Sam Darnold is limiting his mistakes. Their offensive line is blocking well. And when they get Kenneth Walker going, hey, that offense is pretty damn efficient. On top of that, the defense is playing pretty darn well, and for 3/4 of that Arizona game, they were playing really, really well. And taking a look at this matchup, you might just have two really evenly matched teams right now. And so this one's going to be exciting. I've kind of been going back and forth on this game. Originally, I picked the Seahawks at home, who I thought could get the win. However, I am going to go with the Buccaneers to get a bounce back win from their loss against the Eagles last week. My biggest concern for the Buccaneers this week is the status of Bucky Irving, and if he's not ready to go, I definitely could see Seattle winning this game, because if the Buccaneers don't have a ground game to rely on, it's just going to be down to Baker Mayfield, who is a very good quarterback, but they need to supplement the pass game with at least something, and Bucky Irving, he could be a game changer. However, I'm going to stick with my gut here and go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Maybe you're going to have a Sam Darnold turnover or two that's going to change the tide of this game, but if they're able to stop the run with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, I do think the Buccaneers can force Sam Darnold to make a mistake. So because of that, I'm going with the Buccaneers. I'm not super confident right now, but hell, that's what football is all about. Then, from what could be the game of the week, you have this game. You got the Detroit Lions taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh God, this is going to be real, real bad. The Lions taking care of business against the Cleveland Browns, at least some team can, in which their offense was clicking, Jared Goff staying upright. They were able to establish the run. Their defense is looking good, especially Aiden Hutchinson, who is looking really, really good. Of course, with the Lions, the one concern you do have is their secondary. DJ Reed and Terrion Arnold getting banged up in that game, but it looks like those injuries aren't as serious from what I read, so hopefully you're going to get both of them back relatively quickly. They're going to be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, who got blown out by the Broncos on Monday night, and now Bengals fans have to realize their next opponent is the Lions.
Just one day out of your life, Squiddy. How bad could it be?
Oh, Squidward!
Yeah, this is going to be ugly. That offense, good God, man. I am so sorry, Bengals fans. And we know that Joe Burrow, as a very good quarterback, is going to mask a lot of problems. Hell, Aaron Rodgers did that for many years when the Packers did not have a defense. But things are falling apart in Cincinnati. Zach Taylor, I don't know what that play calling is. They have not established the run at all. Chase Brown is not having a good season. The offense can't move the ball. And yeah, it's just really tough times. And while this is being played in Cincinnati, Cincinnati, I don't think there is much hope at all for the Bengals. The Lions are coming in with a high-scoring offense. That pass rush, I think, is going to be able to bulldoze that Bengals offensive line, and this might get very ugly very quickly. So here, I'm going to go with the Lions to get the win. This would be the biggest upset of the week if the Bengals were able to somehow attain victory. But yeah, I don't think that's happening. Lions win. Just don't make it too bad, okay? Following that, another potential great game. You got the Washington Commanders taking on the LA Chargers. The Commanders losing a tough one against the Atlanta Falcons last week, and oh boy, do they miss Jaden Daniels and Scary Terry. But the good news for the Commanders is even though it's been a long 2 weeks without Jaden Daniels, he has been cleared to practice today and potentially could take the field on Sunday.
He's back.
He's back!
Now, it's been an uneven season for the Commanders at this point. They lost to the Packers. Jaden Daniels gets hurt. Marcus Mariota comes in. They're able to get the win the week before. And then this past week, things are just not looking great. So if Scary Terry and Jaden Daniels are ready to go, this team should be back at full strength, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And then we could properly evaluate them to see kind of where the Commanders fit in that NFC conference. They're going to be taking on the Chargers, who we spoke about, lost their first game against the Giants this past week. And that was a tough loss. Not only in the win-loss column, but on top of that, Joe Alt is going to be missing a few weeks as he got banged up in that game as well by that cursed MetLife field. But for the Chargers, the Giants defense was doing a good job making Justin Herbert uncomfortable, who had his worst game of the season this past Sunday. And Justin Herbert, besides that, has looked really damn good. And I'm not going to be giving up on the Chargers just yet, even though their offensive line is all banged up, because Omarion Hampton had his breakout game against the Giants last Sunday. And that gives me a ton of hope, because if they're able to have a balanced attack, and we know how much Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball, if Hampton is that guy, they can bide some time, hopefully until Joe Alt returns. And taking on the Commanders here, Jaden Daniels and what might be his first game back from the past couple of weeks, I gotta go with the Chargers. I do think they have a good enough defense to stop Jaden Daniels. On top of that, if Scary Terry's not playing, they will be down one of their most important weapons. So here, even though I'm worried about the offensive line, I think the Chargers can do enough to win this football game being played in LA. And go Chargers, go. I'm so sorry, Wildflower. Then it's an AFC East Sunday night football matchup as you got the New England Patriots taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Patriots, as we talked about, blew out the Carolina Panthers this past Sunday, and Drake May got a big win over his childhood team. And yeah, I think that's one he's going to remember. But the Patriots offense was firing on all cylinders. Ramondre Stevenson wasn't fumbling it a million times. Stephon Diggs had a really nice game, and Drake May was well protected and was able to move the ball efficiently. On top of that, the Patriots defense has been solid all season, and they're going to be taking on the Buffalo Bills, who had a little bit of a shaky game against the New Orleans Saints. But one of the big bright sides for the Bills is James Cook looks to be picking up right where he left off from last season. He's had 2 really nice games back to back, and that allows the Bills to beat you in a multitude of ways, whether it's with Josh Allen or it's on the ground with James Cook. They're just that darn good. And taking a look at this game, of course, the Bills are still waiting to get some pieces back on defense. If guys like Ed Oliver could return this Sunday, that will be a huge boost for this Bills team and a real test for this Patriots offensive line. In the beginning of this season, it definitely looked shaky, and while they looked really good against the Panthers, the Bills are not the Panthers. And I could actually see this being a pretty darn competitive game. It is a division rivalry, so you never know with these games, and on primetime, so you really never know. But here, I think it's going to depend on if the Bills defense can get after Drake May. If they can force him to make some mistakes, I think the Bills should be able to win this game with ease. However, if the Patriots O-line is able to hold back that pass rush, then the Patriots could make this a really close game. But here, I do think there's a little bit too much firepower for the Patriots defense to contain, so I am going to go with the Bills to get the win. It might be an ugly win on Sunday night, but the Bills will remain undefeated, and maybe they'll just go all the way this time. Then, on Monday Night Football, you got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Finally, a good Monday night game again. I know it's only been a week, but that doubleheader this past Monday was rough. The Chiefs beating the absolute crap out of the Baltimore Ravens. They were establishing the run. Patrick Mahomes was looking good. Xavier Worthy providing a spark to that offense. And Chiefs fans are starting to feel themselves again. talking about the Chiefs, obviously they had a tough start to the season. No Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy getting banged up in that very first game. And you talk about the lack of a run game. That has been a problem for the beginning of the season. But now these past couple of weeks, Isaiah Pacheco started getting things going against the Giants. And like we mentioned against the Ravens, it was an utter domination. This offense looked like a completely different squad with Xavier Worthy on the field. And hell, in a couple of weeks, Rashee Rice is going to be back as well. They're going to be taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have also been having a really nice season. That defense causing a ton of problems for the 49ers this past Sunday, and that defense has gotten so much better from where it was last year. And the offense, Trevor Lawrence didn't turn the ball over. Travis Etienne is looking for a contract extension because he is playing his ass off. And while we're still waiting for the Jaguars to reach their full offensive potential with Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. getting into the flow of things, this Jaguars team is looking to contend, especially in AFC South where the Colts are really their only competition right now. And being played in Jacksonville, I actually think this could be a really close game. It's going to be interesting to see if the Chiefs offense picks up right where it left off against the Ravens last week, and if they're able to move against a good Jaguars defense. And on the other side of things, the Chiefs defense has been pretty damn solid this year. Can Trevor Lawrence continue his lack of interceptions from last week and make sure that they don't turn the ball over and give the Chiefs easy points? Ultimately, I could see this game coming down to the wire. However, I am going to go with the Chiefs to get their third win in a row here. I do believe that offense unlocked something with Xavier Worthy last week, and if they're able to continue that momentum, yeah, they're going to start to be a big pain in the ass again. So because of that, I'm going with the Chiefs to get the big time win here. And if they do, well, then God help us, they're back. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who do you got winning and losing this week? Let me know what you think. You know, I saw me at TomGrossiComedy.com, and a big shout and thank you to all the Patreon and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching, folks. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.